Welcome back. You're listening to the Flow Sports Hour on Flow FM. Paul Gonzalez, the General Manager of the Australian Baseball League and formerly the GM of the Brisbane Bandits in the league, is on the line with me. After an epic championship series on the weekend, saw the Giants walk away with their second straight Claxton Shield. Great to be speaking with you, Paul. How are you?
I'm great, Dan. Thank you, mate, for having me.
My pleasure. Now, I know you're a Brisbane Bandits guy and you spend a bit of time in their front office, and you're certainly no stranger to the Claxton Shield yourself, having secured a win back in your playing days. But I'm sure as a neutral fan working for the league now, you were watching on just as a pure baseball fan during those games in the championship series, especially the 13-inning spectacular on Friday night in Perth. It was just an epic series.
Oh, look, mate, I can't acknowledge, really, I mean, even the semi-finals leading in, every game was tight. It was a nail-biter. And a credit to both the Perth Heat and the Adelaide Giants. They put on an amazing show, not just on the field, but off the field. The energy was fantastic. We had 3 sellouts across the 3 days. Great coverage across, the media in supporting both teams. And the ABL couldn't be prouder of both organizations.
Have you ever seen a better championship series in the ABL? I mean, it was just an instant classic straight away. And I know you've played in at least one yourself, so maybe we'll just put that one to the side. But have you ever seen a better one?
Not from an energy level. When I looked at, to Adelaide's credit, they had an amazing season this year. They led the league. They were number 1 in standings and held that position. And a tightly fought contest against Melbourne at home and were able to take that one away after losing game 1. And then they go to Perth and lose game 1 and then had to come back home and win 2 big games to clinch it. So to answer your question, no, I think we've looked at a lot of the social feeds and how many people have complimented just the quality of baseball, but just how professional both teams were. And it just came down to who was going to execute at the right time. And fortunately for Adelaide, they were able to capitalize on a couple big moments and take home the Shield. Always
good to see a team with their back up against the wall just theoretically step up to the plate, theoretically and quite literally step up to the plate and, deliver under that pressure. It was just amazing to see. And I don't know if back-to-back championships quite qualifies Adelaide as being a dynasty just yet, but if they aren't already, they're certainly on the cusp of it. Are you seeing teams already probably game planning on how to beat them next year? I'm sure there's a bit of buzz about wanting to knock them off the mantle now. Well, always, any time in any sport, when you sit at the apex, everybody wants to take on literally the giant at the moment. It's a credit to the organization, to be honest with you. They started with a very young core group of players, and they stuck to those individuals and persevered through really the early stage of their development. And now between their core athletes and a few interstate players and a really good partnership with the Philadelphia Phillies organization, they've built a really good structure under the leadership of Chris Adams. So he's really great as far as clubhouse manager, and the players really respond to his style, his leadership style, and it's really shown over the last few years just how they've gelled, persevered under some adversity, and like I said, 2 in a row. And let's be real, it took 43 years to get there, and that was we've created broke the big milestone, and now they're talking about, can we continue the run? It is amazing to see them break that drought. I mean, obviously, when there's a team at the top sort of winning everything, other teams definitely want to knock them off the mantle. But it's certainly important to remember that history that, 43 years and nothing until now. So it's certainly great to see that sort of equalisation in the league, I would imagine. And you certainly don't want a league where there's one team right down the bottom perennially struggling. No, look, and like I said, teams have autonomy on how they build their rosters. And Nathan Davidson, general manager of the Giants, has done a really good job of finding the right pieces to that. And like I said, everyone has gone, and they've gone high-tier players, former New York Yankees or former Cincinnati Red type players, and high-end AAA type guys. And that doesn't necessarily mean success. And like I said, it's a short season, and people say, oh, you guys play 40 games. That's short. It is, in essence, compared to the U.S. where they play 152 games in 168 days. So it's
it's a lot of intensity over weekends. And once again, you're going head-to-head with new players every weekend, which is always a challenge.
And this year was a bit different in the ABL, back down to 6 teams from 8 in previous seasons. What sort of an effect do you think that had on the season, and how do you feel it all sort of worked out? Obviously, it was a pretty big change.
I'll be honest with you, and look, it's never good to see teams not continue, but, and we wish both those teams well, but the league actually grew. What people don't realize is that the GK team in particular are made up of the Korean baseball organization, the KBO players. They actually were then placed on 4 of the 6 teams. So we didn't actually lose the actual talent. The talent just was spread over across the league. So we were really fortunate to retain the athletes themselves and still grow the relationship. We currently have 3 Korean professional baseball teams that are now having spring training in Australia, 1 in Canberra, 1 in Sydney, and 1 in Melbourne. And you look at the growth of Korea now, we've got Team Australia is going to be hosted in Melbourne next week for a 2-game exhibition. First time Team Australia's played on soil for a number of years. So, like I said, there's a lot of upside that we see from the business and huge upside. And it doesn't mean that we wouldn't open up opportunities for growth, but we'll make sure that it's sustainable for them and for the league before making any decisions on that level.
Paul, on a more personal note, you've been in the general manager of the league role now for a couple of years. How do you feel that transition has been? Obviously, every general manager is going to take a sort of different outlook on things and bring some different things to the table. But yeah, how have you enjoyed being in that role and having some more responsibility on a league-wide basis rather than just being locked in with the Brisbane Bandits?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I love the transition. I've never really looked at the high performance side of the field. Like, teams win and they have good chemistry on field. That's great. Even when I was involved with the Bandits organization, mine was always about efficiencies, commercial opportunities, partnership growth, stakeholder investment, government relations, and then what we do in the broadcast space or production space. So I've always had a different lens for the game as in my role. And I just transitioned that over saying, okay, how can we create the same level of efficiencies and to enable teams to then focus on not just on-field development, but also commercial opportunities and growth. And I'm starting to see huge trends where, obviously the field stuff takes care of itself, but organizations are now more commercial focused. They're leveraging IP and sharing that. So the reality is the league doesn't exist unless it's sustainable. So we've got to build towards long-term sustainability. So the league's here for another 20, 30 years and the rest.
Yeah, it certainly sounds like your priorities with all that are in the right place, and being someone who has so much experience within this league, but also just as a player. I mean, being an Olympic silver medalist 20 years ago, they've certainly got the right man in the job by the sounds of things. And now with the season wrapped up, where do your priorities sort of go for the next few months? Obviously, we've got a lot of players who come from, like you said, Korea and the minor and major leagues who will, I assume, head back to America pretty soon to get back to their seasons. But what about our own Australian players and the sort of grassroots baseball level? How much of a priority does that become over the next 7 or 8 or 9 months until the next season kicks off?
Yeah, that's a big question, but a really good question. I mean, from the ABL's perspective, we go into strategic planning. So our key items will be schedule. And our goal this year, now that we've got a solidified six teams, and it's always difficult particularly when we came off COVID, where was Auckland and was GK going to return, and now we know we've got 6 strong domestic teams. We'll meet early March as an ownership. We'll go through our debrief as far as what went well, where we can make improvements. We then look at schedule. One of the big obstacles will be, and not an obstacle, but an honor if you make it, but will be Team Australia will go and compete in either the Asia or potentially the American pool for Premier 12. So we'll see 30 of our athletes potentially go overseas to compete for Australia in the green and gold. and that happens in early November. So we've just got to look at how do we set a schedule that doesn't have huge impacts on teams. Obviously, we're very reliant on our Aussie talent, but at the same time, where we can leverage that when they do return, they re-engage with their ball clubs to help them finish and chase the Shield. From a participation standpoint, Baseball Australia is actually the governing body and oversees the ABL, so it is an integrated model. So we'll just continue to drive awareness through the ABL to try to drive and work with the state associations to drive and find ways to bring in new participants of the emerging class of athletes to hopefully one day represent their state or represent Australia.
Fantastic. Well, it certainly is exciting having pro players from over in the minor and the major leagues and from Korea and from all over the world coming to play in Australia, but it's just as exciting to see our homegrown talent rising up through the ranks from their local clubs and getting their crack in the ABL. So plenty to be excited about for the upcoming months and years in the ABL and in broader Australian baseball. What's the sort of viewership been like? It's not the easiest sport to consume from a fan point of view compared to obviously, AFL that's on the back page of the paper and the lead story on the news every night, or in the rugby sort of states, it's rugby league in that spot. But yeah, baseball's obviously not getting quite the same run. So what's it like from the point of view of trying to get more people to consume the content and to watch the games?
Yeah, another big question, but a really good question. To be honest with you, we looked at, and it was the start of when I came in as general manager, I sat down with the CEO, Glenn Williams of Baseball Australia, and we actually looked at some reports about how do second and third tier sports in Australia compete in that landscape when the market doesn't want to pay you $200 million for a TV agreement. So we actually invested in our own OTT platform, and this year launched our own app. Our in-house goal was to have, by this time, let's be real, during our second year, we said if we can get 30,000 people on the database, we've had a huge year and huge success. We're a touch over 41,000. We had close to 80,000 viewers over the championship series. The app, which is called Baseball Plus with a plus sign, has global reach. We were running games, clean feeds into Asian markets and doing either Mandarin, Japanese, or Korean feeds. So there's a huge Asian market we can tap into and leverage a huge fan base in Asia. And when people say, how big is it? Team Australia played Japan in this year's World Baseball Classic, and they had 54 million viewers for that one game. That was one game. They had 54 million. So that's the fan base and the attraction of the sport in the Asian markets. And we have partnership with all three, Taiwan, Korea, and Japan, and including obviously our affiliated partnership and with Major League Baseball as well. So we've really got the four giants of the sport, and now it's just about how do we grow awareness around Baseball Plus and obviously grow our product, not just in Australia, but globally.
Fantastic. Well, baseball is certainly growing in Australia, and if you don't have the Baseball Plus app already, get that on your phone so you can keep up with all the exciting things happening over the next weeks, months, years and beyond. Paul, just one last question before you go, and I might catch you off guard a little bit with this one, but at the start of the show, I was talking about something that I was recently made aware of in Japan, which is the National High School Baseball Championship, the single game elimination tournament, commonly known in Japan as Summer Koshien. Are you aware of this tournament at all?
Oh, of course. It is. They play in Hanshin Stadium where I think they get up to 50,000 people for these games. I guess when I played in the MPB, I played in Japan, and there was a young man that was coming through the high school system, and his name was Daisuke Matsuzaka, who ended up signing a big agreement with Boston Red Sox. And Daisuke was in that tournament, and the next year he was pitching for the Seibu Lions. So my first start in the big leagues, I faced this 19-year-old kid throwing 96, 97 miles an hour with a splitty, and he faced Ichiro Suzuki, and there was 35,000 people just at batting practice, and it was sold out. So yeah, everyone's very aware of that event if you are familiar with baseball around the world, and it's an opportunity for these young men to compete on a grand scale. It's televised, everything. I think it's very similar to like the Little League World Series in Williamsport. But they play in a magnificent stadium, which Hanxing plays in, and sold out crowds. So if you ever get a chance to see it, it's huge energy, but great baseball, but at the high school level.
Well, I was only just made aware of it just earlier today, and my mind is just absolutely blown. I thought March Madness in the college basketball season in America was completely, as is the title says, mad, but this is taking it to another level, and Shohei Ohtani, the best player in the world, being involved, and there's animes about it, and it just seems unbelievable. So I certainly am keen to tune into that next time it's going around and see what all the fuss is about, because it certainly seems like it is absolutely wild.
It is wild, and like I said, our partnership with the MPB and even in Japanese baseball is outstanding at the state levels. There's a lot of respect between the two countries, Australia and Japan. You mentioned earlier about the Olympics. 2004, Team Australia beat Japan twice to go to gold, and Japan had a payroll of about 124 million versus Team Australia, and we ended up beating him twice and beat Daisuke Matsuzaka 1-0 to go and play Cuba for gold. So, like I said, that was a huge, respect earning for Team Australia and Australian baseball, and our partnership has just grown ever since.
Plenty of positives coming out of baseball in Australia, and as I continue hosting this show, it's certainly a sport that I want to keep giving airtime to. So, Paul, thank you very much for your time today, and hopefully you're keen to come back on the show sometime and talk baseball again, because I've had a lot of fun chatting baseball with you. So thank you, and yes, let's talk again soon.
No worries, Dan. Thank you. Appreciate it.